Let's go ahead and get started. Today we'll be doing this painting back here, this Autumn Brilliance painting. Super fun painting for like the weather change. I don't know if you guys started to notice, but the trees are starting to turn red and yellow and stuff. So it's like a good seasonal painting right now. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I have a bigger canvas than you guys. I have bigger brushes, so it's easier to see. So when I say, big brush, little brush, kind of understand that that's where my perspective is at. I will show you the shape of the brush. So this one's like a flatter brush. These are a little smaller, like rounder brushes. I'm only really going to use 2 or 3, but you should have a set. So if you're more comfortable, using specific brushes because you're, handshake or whatever's easiest. So are we ready to get started? Yeah? Okay, perfect. So this painting, we're going to do it back to front. And we'll do it top to bottom, okay? So we've got the background here, which is the yellow and the blue. We can kind of start at the top and move down. The yellow is pretty solid with kind of streaks of white in it. So the way we're gonna do that is I'm gonna take the biggest brush I have, which is this like flat brush. You guys should have a bigger flat brush in there. And I'm gonna put it in the water. So we're using acrylic paint today. Acrylic paint it dries pretty quickly, especially in Colorado. So you want to have your brush wet most of the time. If at any time you feel like you're getting these like streaky, not fully covering strokes, then you want to go in and put some water on your brush, more paint on your brush, and that should take care of it. Okay? So the first step here is going to be taking that flat brush, and I'm just going to soak my yellow paint on there. And just go back and forth. And I'm going to go about halfway down on my canvas with the yellow paint. Okay, does that sound doable? I'll say this too, I'm going to paint a lot faster than you guys because they pay me to do this stuff, but take your time. I'll give you plenty of time in between steps as well to kind of go through. We're going to just go through, just go ahead and throw as much as you can on there. And then what we'll also do, so once you've got that yellow on there, using that same brush, you can go and take a little bit of white and just kind of mix it in certain areas. You don't want it like solid, lighter yellow. You just want streaks of white in there, but not too much. So just as your brush gets dry, occasionally while you're dipping it in the yellow paint, also dip it in the white paint. And then again, if it gets dry, dip it in the water. So it should just be like a 3 steps in one going on. Another thing, as you go and paint your canvas, you're going to want to go and wrap the paint around your canvas as well. This is called an artist wrap or a gallery wrap. Basically, that way you don't have to go and get it framed. You can just go and take down your valuable family portraits and awards that you've won and stick this up instead, since it's your new prized possession.
I like.
See, as I'm going through, I've got my yellow paint coated on there, and then I'm just going in and dipping my paintbrush in the white and kind of randomly streaking it across so it mixes while the paint's still wet. Once I feel like there's like a little bit of white in there and it's all blended, I'm just going to step back and let that dry. And I'll probably give it about a minute or so for you guys to catch up, and then we'll go on to that next step. All right. Now that we have our yellow paint, the bottom part, so the top part of this canvas in the background is yellow. The bottom part, as you'll notice, is blue. Bring it a little closer. So all we're going to do is that bottom half, blue. And if you're not, Nancy's out there watching you guys paint. You guys are doing great. We want to go ahead and do the next step. Even if you're not ready, just try to follow along. And we're going to take a little break after this too, so we can have that background dry. So we're going to do this the exact same way we did the top. I'm hoping everybody's still with me here. You're just going to want to take that brush. I'm going to use that same big brush. I'm going to clean it off really well in my water so I don't make green. And just taking that larger brush and throwing a bunch of blue paint on there and doing the exact same thing. Where I just put a thicker coat of the blue paint on the bottom of the canvas. And it's going to be the same thing where as I go, I can throw in some of that white paint. I'm just going to touch the corner of the white paint there and kind of mix it in. So in certain sections, it'll be lighter. You'll notice that when you put the white and the blue, it's a lot more prominent. So maybe be a little more selective about where you put that white paint. But just kind of going back and forth. A joke that we like to use at the studio is different strokes for different folks. So take your time on that one. But just whatever makes you comfortable getting through, making sure you do the side of that canvas as well on this step. And again, let me know if you have any questions. I'm here all night.
Is there a good way to like paint the bottom edge if we're just using the pizza box for an easel? Like, should we leave that? Because I don't want to pick it up because the yellow is still wet.
You could wait and do the bottom later.
Okay.
That should, I don't see why that would be a problem. You could, with the pizza box, I guess it's flat because I've been grabbing my canvas kind of from the back.
Yeah, I've got mine like propped up like this. I don't know if that's how I was supposed to do it.
Let me see. Sorry, give me a second. Let me pull you up.
It's a certain type of.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly what you want, is just having it. You could have had it the other way too, where part of it was on the ground, but.
Okay.
Or not on the ground. I keep saying that, on the table.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, but that works. Yeah, just wait till the end and you can go back and just paint that bottom part blue. That's going to be fine. I wouldn't worry about it too much. So I don't know if I mentioned this already, but it is sipping and painting, and we're going to take a break in a little bit. So maybe think about what drink you want to get if you're doing that. I know there's children present, so not all of us, but you know, it is almost Friday. Gotta be Friday somewhere. And it is after 5 o'clock too. So do with that information what you will. And I'm just going through now and putting a little bit of that white paint and just random sections and then going over it with blue again since it is bright. And that way it looks a little bit more like water since it is water back there. All right, perfect. So once you've got that bottom part done, for the next step, we will need the canvas to be pretty much dry. I know we put a thicker layer of paint on there, so we'll need to give it about 10 or 15 minutes or so. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and get started on that next step here. And if you're not quite there yet, that's not a problem at all. I can kind of go back and help you if you need. Just ask me any questions that you have. But we should have this sideways Ukrainian flag thing going. What we're gonna wanna do is start working on our tree here. So I'm gonna get rid of that reflection. And you should be able to see it if you look at the Hampden Sipping and Painting icon. It's an image just like this. You can also go to our website if you want to pull it up and have it a little bit easier and like more detailed, because I know there's a bit of a glare. But basically, you're gonna want it thicker at the bottom and then getting kind of thinner at the top. And then we're gonna have it go out like a Y. And then we can create this middle branch and we'll go from there. But to start, I'm gonna start by having, it's about, I'd say like 2/4 thick. I like to use my hand and like the second line on my hand, but every time I use that, there's always a complaint like, well, I don't have the same size hand. So if you don't like that, don't use your hand. Go ahead and just use some quarters, or it's probably about like 2 inches or so. I'm gonna use this smaller brush, which will make it easier for me to get a little bit more detail on there. So it's just like a little bit more narrow, rounder brush. I'm gonna dip that in my water and then just kind of throw it in my black paint. And starting at the very bottom of my canvas, about 2 inches over, I'll just create like a little line. And then I'm gonna make another one. That's about 2 inches away, right? And then what I want is I want my Y to separate kind of in the middle of the canvas. So I'm just gonna start slowly moving this up and then start moving it out right about there. And you don't want your line to be perfectly straight. So I would just make, small brush strokes and kind of move them up. And as you go up, you can start to have it spread out. So you want your lines to go out and then kind of go back up and out again. So out and then, or out to in and then in to out, if that makes sense. I'm having a hard time picking my words today. And it helps to have water on your brush. It makes the brush glide a lot easier. So let's start with that. You're gonna wanna have your 2 lines, and again, kind of out, it's gonna be broader and then a little bit more narrow, and then you can have it go up and be more broad again. starting with that, and once you've got those lines, you can just go ahead and color it in, paint it in. When I get to the top part too, I'm not going to paint that whole thing in. I'm just going to leave it kind of open so I can go through and start making my branches. So all I really have right now is the trunk.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm also realizing now that your canvases are smaller than mine, so it probably won't be a full 2 inches. It'll probably be closer to 1. But it's not a huge deal if you did the 2 inches already. It'll just be a little bit over, which is not a problem at all for this painting. But as we go through, so now that we have our trunk, we're going to want to start working on those branches. So I'm going to use that same brush with the black paint in it. Again, making sure I have a good amount, not a good amount of water, but some water on there so it glides a little bit easier on the canvas. And I'm going to start really easy for myself. And if you want to look at the screen here, now that we've got our trunk, I'm just going to have this one little branch that comes off and then start working on this other branch here. I'm really just going to paint a Y. Okay? So just coming off that right side, I'm going to go and have this just hit the edge of my canvas. I'm not going to worry too much about how thick it is or anything. I'm just going to make that line. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to kind of start making that, putting that line in place. Almost at the same angle. You should have this like very weird little like Y shape. I'm not sure if you can see it because of that glare there, but it's kind of like that.
You're doing great.
Me?
Oh yeah, you're doing
Oh,
great.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So once we've got our little Y hooks over here, kind of looks like an IUD for all med students, right? We know what an IUD is. Okay. Can I make that joke? So you're just gonna wanna go, the next thing we're gonna do is create a line that goes straight up and create one more branch there. So kind of from the middle of my trunk, I'm just gonna go and make, and it doesn't have to be straight, I'm just kind of making a branch that goes up all the way to the top of my canvas. These are just the larger branches that we've got a similar shape to the painting that, like the original, and then we can kind of go off from there. So you've got your three main larger branches. And then what I'm going to do is just go through, so I've got this guy over here. You want the branches to mimic the trunk in where they're thicker near the trunk itself, and then they kind of thin out as they go. We need to do a couple things here. So you need to avoid straight lines at any cost, and you need to avoid symmetry. I know it's really appealing for us when we make things to try to make them symmetrical, but it's not appealing to the eye. So especially when you're looking at something that's supposed to be natural and have a natural form. Try really hard not to make, you know, one over here and one on the other side. Try to make it a little bit more organic. I know for some people that can be harder. I had a roommate that was actually a bio major, and I had to teach her how to make crooked lines because she kept making her mountains like those Charlie Brown mountains where they were a little too straight. So it takes a little bit of like effort. Try actively not to create straight lines. But I'm gonna go through, so now that I've got my like 3 lines here, I'm just gonna thicken up this branch and have it kind of thin out at the end and paint it in. There's that guy there. And this middle branch that goes up, you can have different branches coming off of it. So I'm gonna mimic this line over here and then have, you know, another line coming off here, and then again, just thickening it up when it gets closer to that center line. And thinning it out near the end, and I'll have, you know, one more little guy coming off of it, doing the same thing. And the really cool thing about this painting too is if you make a branch that you don't like or you think is ugly, we'll cover it with leaves. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just try to make a couple branches here and there. And then if there's a problem, we will just pretend it never happened and erase it. As Bob Ross always says in painting, there's no mistakes, just happy accidents. Do we have any questions so far? Can I keep going on these branches?
Good.
We're good? Cool. All right, so I've got my center line here. What I'm gonna do is create another Y similar to this one. And have some branches that come off, maybe like down here. And just go up straight to the top and go off my canvas. And off of the second branch down here, what I'm going to do is just kind of create a little bit of a swirl type shape. These are technical terms. Swirl type shape. And write that down. And just create some more lines coming off of it, maybe another little Y. As I do that, thickening up the bottom. And then you can even just have another branch coming off of that. So you really want the branches to spread out and cover up a lot of the yellow, but not too much. Try not to have too many branches so we still have some negative space to put the leaves. But this part should feel a lot like drawing, where you're just kind of using a pen and paper or something, where it's really just black paint on a canvas and you're just making lines. But maybe I'm oversimplifying it. So once I feel like I've got some decent coverage on everything, I might go through and add like one or two more branches, but I think I'm gonna stop when I feel like it might be enough. And enough might not seem like enough, but once we put the leaves in, you don't want it to be too full either. So I would probably stop once you've got something kind of like this. Almost like those dead trees you see in like the suburbs, just like on people's blocks, or in the city, I guess. Sometimes you just see dead trees. That's what you want this to look like. Just, a couple branches. Should look kind of just empty and solemn, and we'll brighten it up in a little bit. But I'll give you guys a couple minutes, and I'll try to lean this so there's no glare too. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and kind of move us on to the next step. So while our branches are drying up here, we're gonna work on a little bit more reflective stuff down here. So what we wanna do, this step's kind of interesting because we're gonna be mixing paints. So I'm gonna take that flat brush again, the one we used to do that background. And essentially what we have, let me show you. At the bottom here, we have a couple just like watermarks that add to the overall flow of the painting. And what they are is it's blue, white, and black paint kind of mixed together on the brush and just kind of pushed on there. Okay, so how I like to do that is by putting a good amount of the blue paint first. Okay, so taking that flat brush and just covering my blue brush here, or my paint brush with the blue paint, both sides. And I'm just gonna make, and kind of hard, but you wanna just make like random blue lines, really, and like pushing your brush on the canvas just with the paint.
So we're not mixing the paint on the paper plate, we're mixing it on the canvas.
Yeah, we're gonna mix it on the canvas.
Okay.
Yeah, so you've got, your couple dots there, and then what I'm gonna do once I've got the blue on there is just on just the tip of my paintbrush, put a little bit of white paint, and I'm gonna do the same thing, where I just go over those spots with a little bit of the white paint in sections. So if you can see, let me put you a little closer. You should be able to see just like little white marks on the blue marks, kind of randomly scattered across. You can go through once you've got the white paint, add some more. I can cover parts of the tree there. And I'm gonna go through, and now the last thing I'm gonna do is take the brush and just on the very edge of the brush, I'm gonna put some black paint, so you probably can't even really see it on my brush, and I'm gonna go through and add like a little bit of black paint as well. I don't know what I'm not exactly sure what this is, but what it does is create movement in the painting. So now when you look at this painting, you see the water and you see these marks, and then you move up and you look at your leaves that are going to kind of cascade down and bring you back. So it's a way for people to look at your entire painting. Go ahead.
Should I overlap onto the trunk of the tree?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Should it overlap? It's okay. Should it overlap onto the trunk of the tree?
Yes, you can. Excuse me. You can a little bit. It doesn't hurt to at all. It's just a little, it just makes the painting look a little bit more abstract. And again, just creates that flow. So yeah, just kind of randomly pushing your paintbrush onto the canvas with the blue and then a little bit of the white and then a little bit of the black. And you should have something that kind of looks like that, where it almost just creates a wave going onto your tree. Should I leave the camera here for a second?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Little details like this sometimes can be hard over Zoom. But they are easier over Zoom too, because in class you'd see me do this up top in front of everyone and you'd have to come up to watch me do it. So pros and cons, I guess. Okay, and don't spend too much time on this step because you don't want the paint to mix either. It looks nice to kind of have it stand out and where you can see the brush strokes too.
How far over to the left of the painting should we go with the brush strokes?
About halfway across your canvas. Mine goes about halfway, but on the original it goes a little bit past half.
Okay.
So that's kind of up to you. You could probably do, if you wanted to, you could probably go most of the way down. I wouldn't go all the way, but 3/4 of the way to halfway. If you went all the way, that's fine too. It really doesn't make too big of a difference. There's really no wrong way to do this.
Right.
So don't be hard on yourself. You don't get a grade at the end of this Zoom class, so. All right, so now that we have a little bit of practice with this mixing of colors on the canvas, I think we're pretty ready for what's to come. And the last step on this painting, well, it's not the last, it's the second to last. Is there a question? Oh, I thought I heard someone. So it's kind of the second to last step, and it's gonna be all of these leaves kind of at the top that go, they start down here and they just go all the way around the canvas, pretty much back to our bottom part. So it goes all the way around. So these leaves are red, orange, and white. And you'll notice that we didn't give you An orange. Does anyone remember how to make an orange?
Red and yellow.
Wow,
Yeah.
all right.
I know how.
How?
You mix red and yellow together.
Yeah, she's got the right idea.
I can't see anything.
Perfect. So what we're gonna do, what I like to do for this step is I like to go through and put in the red first, and then I like to make the orange on my plate itself, and then going through and putting the yellow and the white on top. Okay, so I'm just gonna take that flat brush, same thing, and the same way that we kind of just pushed our brush onto the canvas for that last step, we're going to work very similarly for this one. I like getting my brush a little bit wet. Just slapping some red paint on there. And kind of starting down here, what I'll do is I'm gonna make a guide for myself for the whole direction, and I'll just put the red paint kind of scattered across randomly. The leaves, the way that they're done, it's very sporadic, and it doesn't go, the way that we're taught to draw leaves is kind of just having them like right next to the branch. We're not really doing that here. You're just gonna kind of randomly put them on and scatter them. So I'm gonna start here. I'm just gonna put, one red dot down there, put another one here, here. And I like to just kind of pull the brush in different directions, just placing it and kind of pulling it off. Just going through, following along with my branches and having some not so close to the branches. And having that cascade down all the way around. Creating an upside down U. And I can go through once I've created that guide for myself and fill in a couple gaps here with some more red spots. Randomly, there's really no right or wrong place to put these since we're gonna cover the whole thing. But I'm gonna start with that red. And then the next thing I would wanna do, I guess I'll give you a minute to kind of place those on with your guide, and then we can start making the orange and doing it again. So I'll give you till like 8:10. Go ahead.
You put some down in the water too?
I did, yes. So when you look at the original painting, if you look at the sipping and painting image, you'll see that the leaves kind of they start pretty low down here, and there's one or two, a very small amount, one or two here and there. And then there's a lot more up here and then a couple more down here. So that's what we'll do, is we'll have, like 4 or 5 down here, maybe like 10 down here, and then we'll just kind of fill this whole upper area. Does that sound good?
Can't wait.
That is the enthusiasm I need.
Have you done one of these, like, is this your first one doing it with the, like, blasting it out and having it just available? Like,
What do you mean?
so we got an email and it was like, hey, sign up for this thing. And I was like, oh, on it, right? Is this the first one that you've done? Are you planning on doing more?
So I've taught one other Zoom class for the studio. That was just a regular class. We did free classes through the month of, I think, May or June, just to get people kind of happy in their houses. We knew COVID was kind of hard, and Nancy wanted to try to get people up and doing something rather than just kind of sitting around and looking at their family's faces. So we did free classes for that. I taught one of those, and this is the first private class I've taught over Zoom, where it was with an organization. But we do more. We have classes in person. We have classes on Zoom. You can go to our website and look at our calendar. If there's specific classes that you want me to teach, you could ask Nancy and request, that you want me to teach a specific class, and we can work with my availability, and I'd be happy to do that as well through the studio. Yeah, but we do private events, we do non-private events. There's scheduled classes every week. I know last night we had a Zoom class, and then tonight I think we had an in-person class. So we're trying to do both. The nice thing too is we have a YouTube channel where we have pre-recorded classes, so you can go and watch and kind of pause and follow along. And those are available for if you just want to have your friends over and do a painting class. It is nice to have the live conversations if you want help and things like that. I appreciate that too, like being able to talk to people. I hope that answers your question. So we probably have our red dots on there. Everyone's kind of, looks like we're slowing down on those. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take that brush and just on my canvas, I'm going to take like a little bit of my yellow paint, just move it to the middle and mix the red in there. The red is darker than the yellow, so I'm going to put more yellow than red to make that orange until I get the shade that I want. And I'm just kind of mixing it right in the middle there. Let's put some more red paint in there. Till I get the shade of orange that I like. Oh Lord, okay. And once I have that shade, I'm gonna use that same brush that I used last time to make the paint, so that way it's already covered in the orange paint when it's ready. And I'm gonna go through, do the exact same thing, and I'm just gonna be, you know, in some sections right next to where I made that red dot, and some I'm just gonna kind of go around and follow along that path I made for myself and fill some of those gaps with my orange. Same thing, I'm just gonna push the brush down and kind of pull it in a certain direction. And there might, if you don't mix the paint too well, you'll get little streaks of yellow and red in there. That looks really nice too, so don't worry too much about having it like perfectly mixed or anything like that. It's nice to have some of that pigment show through. I'll just put a couple little guys down here. And the nice thing about doing it color by color is that you slowly fill the canvas with all the mixed colors rather than just doing a lot of colors isolated in one area. This way all the colors kind of spread themselves out. But now that I've got my orange in there, I could go
So,
through.
like sorry, I feel like I'm talking really loud.
No.
My paint is kind of, it doesn't look as potent on the canvas, and I don't know if, like, is that an issue? Like, am I pushing too hard? Is it the brush? Is it the paint?
Is it not very bright? Do you mean the color's not very bright, or it's just not?
So, like, where am I? Like this, it's like you can see behind it. You know what I mean? Like you can see
Yeah, and that's, you can see behind it on mine too. So you don't want it to cover, you like to be able to see the branches through it. That's really not a problem, but if you don't like that, then what I would do is add some white to it and then add the paint again. Because the white will kind of make a base for you. So if you want to add a little bit of white to your orange and then add those colors again, it'll make them a little bit darker, and that way it'll cover the black.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's not bad to have to be able to see through it either, if you like that. Because that's, in the original painting, you can see through the painted leaves into the background of the branches. But if you have a branch you don't like and you definitely want to cover it, then add the white.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And as I go through, I see little sections where I want to have a little bit more red, so I'm going to go back and do that as well. And if you're done with your orange, or if you're getting close, the next step is going to be the exact same thing we just did, but you're going to put the yellow paint. So you can go through once you've got your orange and follow along that same route and just add the streaks of yellow. Since the background's yellow, it's a little bit harder to see. So you can mix it a little bit with that wet, if you still got the wet red and orange paint, you can mix it directly on the canvas. The yellow paint does show through on the blue, so that's a good place to put some of those yellow leaves. All right, and as we go through and add our yellow paint, the last color we're going to add is the white paint. So same thing, but for this step, I'm going to clean off my brush and do the exact same thing. I'm just going to throw a bunch of white paint on there and go through and kind of pick where I want that white paint to be. And I know I'm going a little bit fast, but the reason I'm doing that is because as you go through, you can put these white paint in spots, and then you can go back and add more of the other colors if you feel like there's not enough of something in one area. The white paint I like to put a little bit more of everywhere because you can add more colors on top of it. And like I said, it creates a really good base. But go ahead and put that white paint anywhere you feel like there's a lot of empty space or you want colors to be mixed a little bit differently. And I'll probably give you like 5 minutes to kind of mess with that. Let me know if you have questions though, I'm listening. And I just want to repeat too, as you're kind of creating your cascading leaves, the leaves that you have down here almost end in like a triangular shape where you've got them kind of wide and then they come down and just disappear, where you've got, you know, one or two little guys down here. You want it to kind of start narrow and then get broad as it goes up and then end up narrow again. Yes? All right, how's it going, you guys? How are we doing? Everyone's focused again. Very cool. Well, make sure every couple, now that we've been doing this for a couple minutes, take a step back and look at your painting and then see where you want to add more foliage or if you want to add more foliage. Make sure to take those little breaks for yourself. Sometimes we get so caught up in like the brush strokes in the painting that we just overdo it and then we look back at it and we're like, oh God. So try to take a quick step back, just like step away from your painting, look at it from a distance, see where you want more color or, you know, more white, more red, and try to make that judgment. But this is, I mean, for all purposes, the last step. I mean, you do have to sign your work. That's technically the very last step. But I'll do another like couple minutes, let you guys work, and if you have any questions, I'll stick around. But I'll do a little closing speech too. So I'll do that in like 3 minutes. Everyone's so into their painting right now. I don't want to interrupt really. I want to thank you guys for joining me today with Hampden Sipping and Painting to paint this lovely painting today. I'm really excited that you chose to do your private event with us. I know that we're a little bit more affordable, like I said before, which makes this a great choice. I had a really good time painting with you guys tonight. Like I said earlier too, I do make money off of tip. We did put my Venmo in there earlier. My little username box right there is also my Venmo. So if you do have any extra money and you feel like I did a really good job, you're welcome to tip me.